If you wait to create the thing that you think is perfect because you think it is, and you haven't like heard from the people who are going to actually buy it, you've likely made a mistake, because they will tell you something that they want that you previously maybe even never thought of on your own. And so start with something, and then let the people that are going to consume it, they're going to buy it, let them give you the feedback, because that's how you create something special. That's where you're going to find something that's going to meet the market where they are and resonate with people in a way that you probably weren't able to do on your own. Hey, what's up? It's Jason Wojo. Welcome back to the Life Hander Show. On the Life Hander Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome lives. I am joined by my brother from another mother, Polish Peter. What's up, dude?
Well, I don't know if I want to agree with that too. I'm just going to have to...
Okay, my sister from another mother.
Yeah, I'll go. I think I'm going to go with the brother then.
Okay. Here we go. So man, we are in part 2 of our 3-part episode, series rather, of guiding business principles. Now, see, these are some of the things that we have covered at the Business Builder Workshop. These are typically, they've been actually moved to a kind of bonus session because we don't cover them at the workshop itself, because we're so full with other content that has really developed into something really special that we're putting all that in there. And that's, by the way, if you've been to that event, it is like drinking from a fire hose. We had a woman say that she learned more in 3 days at the Business Builder Workshop than she did in 2 years of business school, which is awesome. And so that is an awesome event if you haven't been there yet. But what we're going to do today is finish with our list of our top 10 business principles. And so if you haven't listened to the last episode, go back and check it out. And by the way, this is a visual episode. If you are able to, check it out on our YouTube channel. You're not going to miss anything necessarily by just listening to the audio, and you can totally do that. But if you want to also get the visuals and watch the PowerPoint as well, you can go to the YouTube channel to watch. So last time we covered number 1, quick summary. It has to fit your vision. Your business has to fit your personal vision. It should complement your vision, not compete with your vision. Number 2, you got to treat your business like a business. It's not a hobby. It's not something you can approach with a lackadaisical,
What?
Exactly. An approach that is anything more than serious and focused. Number 3 is you are in the sales and marketing business, and this is an often underappreciated, undervalued part of business that people typically miss and suffer as a result of that. And then I believe that's actually where we stopped, man, right? Do we stop there?
I don't know. You're the one who's in charge of this episode. Yeah, that's where we started. Stopped. So here's the thing. If you haven't listened to the first episode, I highly encourage you guys to listen to it, because you hear it has to, align with your vision. But there's a lot more to it than just calling it that. So if you haven't listened to it, go check out that episode. It's on Facebook. It's on podcasts. It's on Spotify, wherever the Life on their show is at. So Go check that out. And then as you're here, let's listen to part 2. What we got for part 2, man?
Let's do it, man. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to share our screen for those who are watching this, and so that they can go ahead and follow along with us. So our first guiding principle that we're going to cover on this episode is profit is the priority. Now, what do we mean by that? So you got to realize when you have a business, you have top line sales, top line revenue. They're both equivalent terms, but after that, you have costs in your business. Now, the first round of costs are those costs that are typically associated with the production of that widget or the fulfillment of that product. And so those are called cost of goods sold, COGS, right? And then from there, now you have a sequential breakdown of all the different expenses in your business until you get to your bottom line. And your bottom line is your net profit at the end of the day, at the end of it all. That's what's really the most important part in your business. And the reason why we're talking about profit as being a priority is because, frankly, it doesn't matter how much you make in revenue if there's no profit. And so this is where, for instance, you might think someone's successful if they have a $2 million business, but if their expenses are $2.1 million, that is not a profitable business. And so what you really need to keep an eye on is your bottom line. It is profit that puts food on the table. It's profit that you can buy things with. And, this is also something that I want to kind of take a slight diversion here with people talking about equity in their business. And especially if you're a real estate investor, you think of hey, I have $100,000 of equity. I have $1 million of equity. Equity doesn't put food on the table. Equity is not liquid. Equity is a theoretical profit, but it's not profit while it's equity. And so you got to convert that. And so This is where, at the end of the day, it's cash flow, it's profit that puts that food on the table for you and your family. And without profit, without cash flow, your business is going to eventually fail, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we see in the news, if you look in the news, you see, multi-billion-dollar corporations, and all these huge companies, all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, kind of fail. And they go bankrupt or whatever the case may be, because, they're calling multi-billion-dollar companies a revenue kind of based number, as opposed to what the actual cash flow is, the profit is. And I think and think about it this way from this perspective as well, as what you focus on grows, right? Where focus goes, energy flows. If you look at it right here, focus goes, energy flows. That's my boy Tony kind of, coined that phrase. But if you're focusing on the revenue side and you're constantly looking at revenue, guess what's going to be growing? Revenue. We're not going to be looking at your bottom line. You're not going to be looking at expenses. You're not going to be concerned about expenses as much. You're going to be hiring left and right, or whatever it might be. You're not going to be, thinking about how to hire necessarily the right way because you just want to get a butts in seats or whatever it might be. I've seen this happen, in companies. So when you start looking at profit and profit first, and you start looking from the cash flow, think about it. How do you actually run your business? How do you create a vision for the business that we talked about in the first session? You set it up in a completely different way, and your focus is on profit, focus is on cash flow. And now you're looking at this number, and as you are, creating goals for yourself, let's say you created goals for cash flow, that number is going to grow. That number is going to grow. And eventually, revenue is probably going to grow as well. But the important number is the cash flow. And that's what you're going to be focusing on make sure that your business, is going to survive the, ups and downs. Because that's when cash flow is, I think, when there's the tough times, that's when the cash flow makes the business survive.
Yeah. So there's a couple of points to that, man. I'd say, first thing is, and this is just an additional kind of tip for you. You got to keep reserves in your bank account. Don't run the account ragged. One approach to profitability that I like that helps is just mainly from a psychological and organizational perspective is like profit first, which Mike Michalowicz has developed. We've had Mike on the podcast. Yeah. He would disagree. And so we've had him on the podcast a couple times. And this is so any business that's not using profit first, I'd strongly encourage you to do that. And the other thing you got to do is realize keeping expenses low is part of the equation. It's not the only equation. You can only cut so much, but you really got to kind of prune back the business regularly, especially if you are trying to grow, because what can happen to your profit as revenue increases and you start to scale is those margins can get, they can get shrunk. They can get squeezed because now you're introducing more overhead typically associated with that business. Because now, for instance, you have managers managing managers and things like that. And you have layers into your business. And so you got to kind of keep an eye on that, especially as you grow. And so keeping an eye on that bottom line is valuable. One other thing to consider, though, is that this isn't, and by the way, we talk about this at the Business Builder Workshop, winning with money. It's really, I use the analogy of a game of football where you have your offense, which is your ability to generate revenue or score touchdowns, right? And then the defense, which is to prevent the other team from scoring. And defense in this case is your ability to manage and steward what you have and take prudent financial care of the finances and resources that you already have in your pockets. And then, the offense is to go make more money. And that's important too, because you really do need both. You can't just win a game of football by defense, because even if you have two teams that are awesome at defense, it's 0-0. Nobody wins.
Yeah.
And so you still need to be able to make money. And ideally, consistent cash flow is really important, because it's those swings that can absolutely put a business out of business if you don't have the margin and the safety net to help you pass that.
Yeah, on that note, as of this recording, Detroit Lions are one of the top teams in the NFL. Well,
You guys lost this weekend, so I don't know what you're talking about. I just saw you guys lost.
Well, I'm going to ignore that loss. That was what, how you kind of can cut one out? That would be the one.
Yeah, take the high and low. All right,
that's right.
Next point regarding the profit is be very careful about increasing overhead unless the company can pay for it. And I won't say this is a never, but for instance, it's risky at best. And what I mean by that is, let's say there's some new software or a new hire or some other part of your business that you're like, hey, if I just had this one thing, we'd go from being, cash flow negative to cash flow positive. Or if this sales rep, we're going to put him on a salary with maybe it's a small salary with a commission, but you're relying on you're relying on the sales from that position to generate and cover their expense. That's risky. It may or may not happen. So just be careful with that. Like, I'm not saying never do it necessarily, but really, really be very, very careful about this. And so, like, this is, for instance, I think a lot of people get into trouble here early on, especially early on in the business. I mean, if you have a reason to think this and say you've done it 100 times and it's worked in the past, that's a little bit different. But let's say you're a new business and you don't have any sales, you have no proof of concept, you really are developing your kind of like, your acumen here. I would be very careful about getting a bunch of softwares in place and spending a bunch of money and doing all this stuff that's going to put you behind the 8 ball and give you a pinch financially. That may be a problem.
Yeah. What ends up happening too is increasing the overhead unnecessarily. Happens a lot of times in the good times, right? When everything seems to be just going up, 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 like economy or whatever. And that's when it can really hurt you moving forward. So you got to be the only thing I would say is just watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Watch
smart.
your P&Ls and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Be smart with it. You really got to keep an eye on cash flow because that's such a problem I see with businesses. All right, next principle.
But one thing, listen, one last thing I will say this before we get into the keep it simple. This profit first, the profit is the priority. Well, if you take that on in your business, if you incorporate it in your business, incorporate it in your own life even. We've recorded episodes. Go watch one of the episodes that, Mike Mihailovich was on here about the profit first. It will transform your life. It will transform how you run your business because you pay yourself first. You pay towards the business first. You look at the cash flow first. You look at the profit first. And when you start operating from that perspective, it completely changes how you operate, how the business operates, how your employees show up, because there is something different about this. And even in your own family and your own well-being, sleeping at night and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really powerful strategy to incorporate in your business.
Well, and also, man, and some people might be wondering, well, how do I become profitable? Well, first of all, you got to make sure your business model to begin with, like the margins are appropriate for, you're not a commodity. You're not getting squeezed and pinched because everybody else around you is offering the same thing. It's a race to the bottom when you simply try to, reduce your prices. And so, like, at some point, not all businesses are created equal in their ability to create a profit. And so you kind of got to look at and make sure that you have the margin for this. Now, a good, not a perfect, but a good idea to start this is if there's already a business there and people are doing it and you learn about that business, you may find out what typical margins are to be expected. So for instance, like when I was rehabbing houses, I would, the traditional formula back in the day that most people would use was like 70% of your after repaired value minus repairs. That's what you would offer when you were going to buy a property. So let's say there was a property for 200 grand, 70% of 200 grand is $140,000. And if it needed $40,000 of repairs, then I'm going to offer 100 grand. And that's the most I'd offer for it. And so out of that, so basically what you're saying is like you have 30% potential margin of profit. But what really happens is, by the time all these other costs are associated with it, maybe you're going to make 10 or 15% on a property on average. And that is typical for a flip. And so that's where you researching whatever particular industry you're in. Maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 2%, but you can sell in volume and make it up that way. Like everyone's a little bit different. So you got to know what those margins look like. But make sure you're cash flow positive. Absolutely. So, all right, let's continue. So the next one is to keep it simple. So one thing that I've learned over the years is that the more complex you make things, the less likely you are to do it. The harder it becomes to manage and the more, you procrastinate on things. And so complexity is the enemy of implementation. And this is in regards to anything. I don't care if you're setting up a funnel online. I don't think it matters if you're setting up an org chart in your business or your chart of accounts in your QuickBooks. Complexity is the enemy. You got to keep it simple. I don't care if it's even, maybe you have an idea for 10 different product offerings. Like that is going to hang you up 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. And, this can actually go with everything in the business. It can go, and even for yourself as a person, as the CEO, as the founder, as the, person who runs the company, keep your life simple, keep your things simple in your life, because as you grow, what ends up happening a lot of times that the complexity tends to increase. So if you start with the simplicity as you're building that business, the principles that you're founding this business on, that, how you are strategizing in the business and keeping it simple, that's when you start to grow the business. The complexity of the, ability for it to become more complex is less of a problem, as opposed to when you first start. Think about it this way. Like for me, my wife argues with me a lot because I don't have like 20,000 different shirts that I want to wear. I keep it simple. I put this pretty much the same type of a shirt on, those kinds of things.
Not as simple as me, bro. Not as simple as me.
That's true. Not as simple as you. Yeah, I mean, it's a wife shirt, I mean, think about it. At least listen, on this podcast, I actually wear the life in a shirt, unlike some people.
Dude, my wife got me this trophy husband shirt, so...
Whose husband? What husband?
I'm a trophy husband, bro, whatever that means. Like, yeah,
I don't know. That she just wanted to make you feel better, I think. Anyway, but listen, getting back to the conversation, it is so important to keep things simple. And what does that look like, actually?
Well, dude, so let me give an example, man. Like, so some of you guys have heard me share about like Infusionsoft and Keep, and which, by the way, I love this software, and it had a huge impact for me, and all the businesses that have kind of used it. And so, here's the thing, though. So Keep helps me automate things, right? And I can essentially design an automation that could do almost anything with enough tinkering, and like I can have if-then situations, and I can, well, if they're this kind of person, do this. If they did this action here, do this. And you could have all of these one-off situations for every different circumstance and scenario you could conjure up. But at the end of the day, the more that grows into a behemoth of a automation campaign, the less likely I am to not only ever finish this thing, but even launch it. And so, I remember when I first started off, I was encouraged by a couple guys within the Keep community. They're like, just get version 1 done, version 1 done. And then later you can add some complexity to it if you want, but you have to keep it simple if you're actually going to get, rubber hitting the road, if you're going to make progress and get going.
Right, because I'll give you an example. So let's say you're setting up a marketing strategy. You have a video on the website that you want people to go and see. And based on that video, they take some kind of an action. Let's say they click on the button to go buy your product, right? So you can create a campaign. If you were to complexify it, you can go and say, one person clicks on the link to go to that page, put them into this campaign to send out these emails. Now, when they watch it first, 10 seconds and they quit it, put them in this campaign and have them send out those emails. If they watch half the video, you put them in this sequence and send those emails. When they finish the video, but they don't take action, put in this sequence. And notice now you have about 5 or 6 different email sequences that you have to write. And now you can't release the product because you got to write all 5 of them. And before you get to 5 of them, now another thing comes up, and another thing, another thing, another thing. Before you know it, it's been 6 months, you never released it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you start keeping it simple, you just go create the video, create the first email campaign or whatever that you needed, and just send it out to that. And you just put it out there. And as you are going, then you can, based on the result, you can start tweaking it and things like that.
Right.
I'm telling you, because here's the other thing about complexity. I think complexity creates this atmosphere of finding what the bottlenecks are, what the problems are. Because this thing is so, complexified. I don't know why I keep using this word. Thanks a lot, Bojo, because I got this from you. So it gets so complexified that it's hard for you to pinpoint where the problem is.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's, you are trying to see why is it this offer is not converting, or why the people are not responding to this ad or whatever. And because you have 15 different campaigns and 5 different, media areas and all those kinds of things, what ends up happening is hard for you to figure out what that actually is.
Man, well, yeah, that's totally true. And I've done that to myself too, where I've overly tried to. And here's the other thing too, is like, I think sometimes doing that kind of stuff is an effort to be perfect. Like it's a perfectionist kind of habit where like you want everything to be perfect.
Yes.
And so you just end up creating nothing because you never launch it because you're so consumed with like, making it perfect. And here's the thing to realize too, and this is the next point, like as you grow, complexity will naturally increase. When you have more layers in your business, when you have more moving parts, that complexity will amplify. And so you really got to very, very diligently, like I kind of think of it this way, man, like it's easy to manage one rental property. It's a whole lot different when you have 100 or 1,000. And so this isn't everything. Like we could talk employees, it's harder to manage 20 people than it is one. And so, as you just got to keep an eye on that. And the only, and that's not to discourage you from scaling at all. It's just to kind of have the forethought and the understanding and the expectation that this is going to occur. How am I going to head it off at the pass to not curtail my efforts here and not to sabotage my growth in a way that'll allow me to kind of stay organized and in control of what's going on before you create just this monster, right? That's going to be really, really tough to wrestle to the ground. Hey, we'll get right back into our interview, but before I do, I want to tell you about something that's incredibly awesome and amazing, and that is what I consider to be our freedom formula in Life and Air. Now, if you're at Life and Air, you've been following us for any period of time, you know we're all about helping you create a life and business you love. You need to have both, right? You can't just have a great life and your business isn't making you any money because that's gonna stink. And you can't have a business that completely takes up all of your free time and you're stressed out and running around with your hair on fire because then you're not gonna have the life you want, right? And so you need to have both of these. And that's why we have 2 events. We do these all over the country. We do a handful per year. Peter and I teach these personally. And this is the Get a Life Getaway and the Business Builder Workshop. So if you don't have the life you want, you need to put together your vision and your plan for your blueprint for the ideal life you want to live in every single area and reverse engineer the exact steps to make that a reality. Get to the Get a Life Getaway. If business is your challenge right now and you need to go there first, totally cool. We totally get that. And so come to our Business Builder Workshop because we teach you how to run a real business, not one that requires you to do everything in it and wear all the hats and have you running around with your hair on fire constantly. Like that's not a business, that's a job. And it's a bad job because you got a bad boss and you're the bad boss. And so let's get you out of that role. Let's help you create a business you love that works without you. So you have time for the vacations, you have time for life's curveballs, you have time to do all the things you want to do and the finances to support that and finance it. So go to lifeinner.com right now. We also have a very special offer on both of these events, and I can't tell you how long it's going to last because I don't know. Peter, tell them about the special promo we've set up.
So here's the special promo we got for you. Because you're a loyal listener to us, you listen to the podcast, you endure the listening to both of us here every single week, we have a special 50% off coupon. That's 50, half of it off. So when you go to lifepreneur.com, click on the tab up at the top of the page called Events. Pick the event that you want to go to. At the checkout page, there is an area called the promo code. Type in the word podcast, PODCAST. That's my English language. I think I got this right. Podcast, right? Yeah. Hit apply, and you're going to instantly get 50% off your ticket price. Come to the event. Introduce yourself to us. We're going to be there. Tell us you found us on the podcast. You got it from here. We love meeting the listeners from the podcast. And let's help you create the life that you want and your business that you love.
Let's do it. We'll see you guys at an event soon. Put this on the calendar. This will change your life. This will change your business. Let's get back to our podcast episode right now.
So I heard a while back, long time ago, when Steve Jobs was still alive, I've heard that there was a department in the Apple that all they did, their whole job was to make sure that whatever the customer, when they got the phone, and they, were doing something on the phone, anything they wanted to do wouldn't take more than 3 clicks, 3 pushes, 3 steps, whatever it might be. So the whole department was doing is just keep it down to 3, no more than that. And that was their whole entire job. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons why Apple has been successful in them, because that idea, I think, has transformed how I operate. Listen, on the Apple product, I don't have to do 30,000 things. Just keeps it simple. Go, if I want to make a phone call, just push this button and this and that and that. And all of a sudden it becomes a lot more efficient. You know what I mean?
Well, dude, this principle applies to everything. Like, I don't care if you're working out in the gym or if you're talking about creating an SOP for your employee. Keep it simple.
I think we
Yeah, and here's another point. Simple is simple. We just talked about this. Simple is easier to launch and it's easier to run. Also, simplicity is oftentimes less expensive. So, we literally just this week have been looking at all the subscriptions we have in one of our businesses, and we have over 20 subscriptions in the business. Everything from project management to special landing page stuff to CRM stuff to scheduling software to it adds up quick. And I'm
Do the
like,
haircut for men? Did you have the subscription too? The
haircut for men? Dude, that's not a
hair
thing.
club.
Hair club, yeah. Hair club for men. And just like you have your recurring hairspray deliveries from Amazon, right?
See, you had to come back. Did you guys see that?
Of course, we can't let you get the last one. So, but it's less expensive, which, by the way, plays into the previous slide that we showed you, the previous topic, which is profit is a priority, right? So when you keep it simple, not only is it easier to run, but it's oftentimes more profitable. So that's really important to know as well. And so here's another very important point. Simplicity is often easier and takes less time to maintain. And so the less things you have to manage, the less time you have to spend managing them. And when you do that, now you have the ability to do other things with your time that are better suited, better ROI on your time. And I don't mean just financially, but with life. We keep getting back to this thing, Life and Air is all about life first. And so when you have a simple business that doesn't require you to, maybe you have simple SOPs so your staff can do it. And maybe your business is structured in a simple way so you don't have a lot of time involved in it. You can do all the other things you want. And so simplicity oftentimes requires less time to maintain, which means you have more free time for the stuff you want to do. So that's another reason.
Right. And one last thing I want to say about keeping it simple is this. I think there is a mind, the belief system that runs this, wants us to complexify things, makes it more complex and things like that. I think the reason for that is, one, you mentioned before, this perfection kind of a thing. But I think it gets down to this fear of not being good enough. And what I mean by that is when you start looking at, making it more, adding this part or that part or whatever the case may be, it makes you feel like you're doing something, like you're building something, like this is going to be something, impactful or whatever it might be. And you complexify it, right? You make it this big monster because think about it this way, like the perfection and being good enough, when will you ever reach it? You'll never reach it. There's always something next. There's always something next. So same thing with these campaigns and in a business, you're going to start even like interviewing employees. There's always next question that you can ask them. There's another question that you can ask that employee. There's always, another thing that you can put in place or whatever it might be. So when you understand that all it is that from that kind of a perspective, like perfection or not good enough or whatever it might be, now you have the power to actually go and, you know what, one of my big company values is going to be keep it simple. So we're going to ask ourselves when we have our meetings, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk. We're going to say, is this simple enough? Right? Could we cut it down to less steps? Could we make it simpler? Those kinds of questions.
Well, man,
and then,
to your point, dude, I think you said something there. I think just because your business is simple doesn't mean you're simple. There's not a correlation, it doesn't mean you're a simple person at all. And so some people feel like they're not as sophisticated or they're not as sophisticated as somebody else who has all these moving parts and check out my business. I have all these cogs and all these wheels and all these buttons and levers. Right. And this person just has a simple business. And they're like, oh, I feel kind of inadequate now because mine's so simple and theirs is so cool and so complex. And they have the Tesla and I have the, whatever, the Model T, but that's just not true.
Right. And there's not much going on here. It's simple. You don't, from that perspective, you keep saying you keep it simple. All right, let's go to the next one. What do we got?
All right. So next principle is ready, fire, aim. Yes, I said ready, fire, aim. I didn't say ready, aim, fire. This is I'll tell you, man, this one for me was really tough because this is not in my my DNA. I want to have everything kind of planned out in advance, all my T's crossed and I's dotted. And this principle kind of shook me when I first learned it, but it is so true. Ready, fire, aim. What it means is getting out there before you're even 100% ready. Getting out there with the version 1 right? Version 1 is version done. Getting out there, keeping it simple. Start with MVP. MVP meaning your minimal viable product. Get something
Not
out
most
there.
valuable player.
Yeah, it could be, I guess, too, right? Most valuable Polak?
There you go. Yeah, that's what.
Right.
No, but listen, I totally agree with this because for me it was hard too. I mean, if you know my past, I mean, I came out as an architect. You got to be perfect. You got to have everything done before you put it out. The blueprints have to be done before you actually put it on the job site. You know what I mean? So that is a really difficult thing, not just for us. I think a lot of people, because I think that society teaches that way. You know, look at like school system, how we have to do this before we can go and, you know, do something else. So how do you actually work with that though? How do you make this work?
Well, man, I think the first thing you got to do is wrap your head around it as being like okay, like and being okay with it. And that's to me the biggest challenge here is the mental. This is one of the things I'd say the mental component of this is the most important. You know, because everybody wants to have the perfect whatever, but I want you to think for a second. Like, dude, I just updated my OS to like 14.1.7 or something like that. And each different version of that OS for my Mac has flaws, has bugs, has glitches. And so imagine if and Windows, gosh, they're probably, I don't even know. They're probably on version 1000. I have no idea.
There will be no Windows.
There would be.
Ever. We still wouldn't have Windows if they waited for the perfect one.
That's the whole point. And so we get so consumed with having everything perfect from the start. But what I've realized is that your consumers, your customers give you the feedback to make the better version. If you wait to create the thing that you think is perfect because you think it is, and you haven't like heard from the people who are going to actually buy it, you've likely made a mistake because they will tell you something that they want that you previously maybe even never thought of on your own. And so start with something and then let the people that are going to consume it, they're going to buy it, let them give you the feedback. Because that's how you create something special. That's where you're going to find something that's going to meet the market where they are and resonate with people in a way that you probably weren't able to do on your own. Super, super important. Done is the new perfect. That's the next point here. So done is the new perfect. Getting something. And by the way, I am not saying put junk out there. Like that is not what I'm saying, but put something out there that is a minimum viable product. Like it works, it performs its function. You know, say you're creating a lead magnet, for instance, for your website, and it's, instead of creating this perfectly, you know, you did something in Adobe like Illustrator or InDesign, you just put it in a Google Doc, right? God forbid, you know, you don't have all the fancy colors and the formatting to make it look perfect, but if the content is there and this content's perfect and it's awesome and it's powerful and it impacts people, that's your MVP. Start there. You can format it later, right? Or if, you know, you have something that you really want to bring to market that, you know, it's just not perfect yet. It's almost there. That is holding you up. And regarding the mindset about this, it's two things. One is using what you have to get what you want, meaning here's where I am right now. Here's the resources. Here's the time. Here's the money I have now to get this done. But also I want you to wrap your mind around this. When you don't bring something to market, when you're waiting, when you're procrastinating, and let's say it takes you an extra 3 months or 6 months, that's 3 or 6 months that somebody is going without what you have that could make a huge difference in their life. And so that fear of looking bad and that fear of putting something out that's not absolutely perfect and doesn't have a bow on it, somebody else is out there right now that needs what you have, and that they don't care what it looks like necessarily. They want the result that you promise. And so get that to them. And then that way, because otherwise you're robbing them of that opportunity. You are not helping them when you could be. So therefore, you know, if you're not extending a helping hand when you should be, then you're kind of guilty by correlation. Yeah,
and I think you can help me with this quote because I don't remember who said it, but I know we talk about it at the Business Boulder. Is somebody said that if you're not embarrassed by the first version that you put out there, you released it too late.
Yeah.
You know who said that? You know, but it's so true, because think about it this way. When you wait, think about it, you've been working with this by yourself, for yourself, you know, in your business for probably time. So you know everything about it. You've seen it 1,000 times. You looked through it 1,000 times. And guess what? Your audience has never seen it. So when you release it to them, it should give you a little bit more of this good feeling that they've never seen it. So to them, it looks a lot better than it looks to you. So when you start to thinking about this ready, then you fire, then you adjust. You put it out there. Like one of my students, literally, I just told him, because he's putting something else into the market. And I said, get yourself some beta students. Go put it out there, get them beta, and let them help you build this piece of software that he's putting out there. Yeah. And literally, he's got a few beta people now, because he was waiting to put all this stuff together before he was going to release it. Now these people are fixing their problems, the bugs or whatever, helping. One of them actually takes it on himself to go and fix it. And he sends it back to him. I mean, think about it. That's pretty freaking cool. So when you start looking from that perspective, I think you're going to be a lot more successful, because, you know, there's going to be somebody who's going to be tinkering and trying to get this out and aiming before they fire. And you're going to be 2-3 months into it already firing, and you're getting your customers. They're going to come to you and you're going to build that business.
Well, and dude, I love that, man. I love these stories. Like this kind of thing, like really gets me fired up. And I think this is one of the entrepreneurial skills that has the biggest impact on your success. I heard a story about Jesse Itzler. So Jesse is a former, he sold Marquis Jets to NetJets. He is married to Sarah Blakely of Spanx. And so Jesse had an early ambition to be a rapper. Which is awesome. Like this guy is like, it's, and you got to do some research on this guy. He just has story after story of this ready, fire, aim approach. And so this is in the 80s, and he didn't have any money. And this is, by the way, the story is in reference to like using what you have to get what you want, right? When you don't, you're like, I can't do that. I can't do that. Like look for what you can do. So Jesse was trying to figure out how to make a demo tape, for his rap career. Right. And so he didn't have any money for studio time. So he's like, man, I can't record it. And so what he did, check this out, is he had a, we called them a ghetto blaster back in the day. You know, the 2 speakers and your cassette player. That's what they're called back in the day. And so he had his radio in the background playing the music, the instrumental. He hit record on his home answering machine. Remember answering machines? Remember those things? So he's having the music play out of his radio. And he's rapping into his answering machine on his phone, for his home phone, because cell phones weren't even around yet. And he recorded that, and that was his demo. And he sent out a bunch of cassettes to all of these different agencies. And dude, this guy is like, that's the mentality, like that you got it, just get it. And man, it's served him so well. And this, I love this kind of dude. And this guy, man, we got to get him on the show, man. I don't know if he'd ever go for it. We're going to work. You guys, if anybody knows Jesse Itzler, reach out to us, because we need to get him on the show. He's awesome.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
So, but that's the way you do it. Like, that's how you get this stuff together. That's how you get out there with whatever you have. Now, you want to talk about an MVP version? That is an MVP version, right? So that's kind of the stuff we're looking to do. So, all right, let's continue. Avoid perfectionism, right? We're going to continue to hang on this. Perfectionism, I mean, listen, perfectionism comes down to a lot of fear of looking good. What are other people going to think? Am I going to be judged? You know, all this other kind of stuff.
Looking good.
Yeah. That's what keeps you stuck. The way you do this successfully is by getting that thing out there, getting feedback from your customers, from your clients, evaluating that feedback, making the improvements based on what they tell you, and then you reiterate, and then you continue to iterate over and over again until this thing gets better and better and better. And we have operating system, 14.1.7, whatever. So that's how it does. That's how you do it. Most people mistakenly, and this is tragically, wait until they think they have that perfect thing. They put it out there, and then they find out there's no market for it. This isn't what people want. This isn't what the market needs. And they end up just struggling, and they never have a fighting chance. So we got to avoid that.
Yeah, it makes me think about, I don't know if you remember back in, was it 2015, 16, when me and you started doing the Life on Their events?
Oh, dude, do we know what we're doing? No, we figured it out, right? We do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
Yeah, dude, at the end of the event, we do our evaluations. We ask like what was good, bad, and ugly. And people gave us lots of great feedback, and we used and implemented that. And now, years and years later, we've refined that. In fact, it continues to be refined. It continues to get better. And so that's what we're all about. And that's,
but here's the thing: without this ready, fire, aim ideology, we would never release those events. They would never be out there because we're constantly trying to tweak it and do this before we do that, right?
That's right.
So we put it on the event, see how it worked, get the surveys, get the responses, tweak. Next event, tweak. Next event, tweak.
Right.
And that's how you get better and better in your business.
So I got a quote here by Jeff Bezos and about making quick decisions, right? And this is in regards to getting it out there and avoiding being perfect. So here's what he says. He says, most decisions should probably be made with somewhere around 70% of the information you wish you had. If you wait for 90%, in most cases, you're probably being too slow. And so here's just an example of doing what you can do to make sure that you can get what you want to get. So that's really, really important. All right. So that is our 3 principles for this time. We still have 4 left to review. Number 1, profit is a priority, right? We need to have cash flow in our business. Number 2, keep it simple. Keep it simple. That is a guiding principle in how you structure your life and your business. And then lastly is ready, fire, aim. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We hope you've got something out of it. More than anything, we help you do something with it, right? This is not just corny jokes and just talk, right? This is meant to be taken and done something with and implemented. And I know there's a difference between information and implementation. And that's why actually, I want to invite you to come to one of our events, the Get Life Getaway or Business Builder workshops, that we can help you implement these things into your own life. Go to lifeinair.com to learn more. Leave us a review or a rating. We'd be very, very eternally grateful. And we will see you next week, everyone. Take care.